need to put up my sound there. It's a really important idea because so often today, you know, we are just like jaw-dropping over the fact that we seem to be surrounded by injustice, or we find ourselves wondering why there is no justice. In fact, in the book of Isaiah, chapter 59, we find that the prophet talks about what is happening in the nation of Israel back in the day. And one of the big issues is the fact that there is no justice. Let me just read a couple of these verses to you. And it starts out, Isaiah 59, it says, "Behold, the Lord's hand is not too short, that it cannot save, neither is his ear too dull, that it cannot hear. But your iniquities have made a separation between you and your God, and your sins have hidden his face from you, so that he does not hear. For your hands are defiled with blood, and your fingers with iniquity. Your lips have spoken falsehood, your tongue mutters wickedness. No one sues righteously, and no one pleads honestly. They trust in confusion and speak lies. They conceive mischief and bring forth iniquity. They hatch adder's eggs, that's a serpent, okay? And they weave the spider web. And he who eats of those eggs dies, and from that which is crushed, a snake breaks forth." And it goes on to talk about violence. It talks about violence, something that we see pretty regularly right now in America, throughout the earth, but in particular America. The works of iniquity. It talks about the feet of those that commit such violence, the feet of those that commit evil. They just run to it. And it goes on to talk about the hastening of the shedding of blood of the innocent, all right? And this is, this leads us to this place where in verse 8 of Isaiah 59, it says this. It says, "They do not know the way of peace, and there is no justice in their tracks. They have made their paths crooked, and whoever treads on them does not know peace. Therefore, justice is far from us, and righteousness does not overtake us. We hope for light, but behold darkness, for brightness, but behold gloom." Or we walk in gloom. I mean, it's just like there's no hope. It says we grope like blind men along a wall. We grope like those that have no eyes. We stumble even when it's midday, when it's still light. And it goes on and on, all right? And it just focuses on this concept of the lack of justice in Isaiah 59. And it says, "In transgressing, we deny the Lord. And in turning away from our God, we speak oppression and revolt." Oh, that ain't going on in Washington, right? All right? "Conceiving in the heart and uttering lying words." The prophet then says, "Justice is turned back, and righteousness stands far away. For truth has stumbled in the street, and uprightness cannot enter. Yes, truth is lacking, and he who turns aside from evil makes himself a prey. And the Lord saw it, and it was displeasing in his sight that there was no justice. So here we are in a season right now where everywhere we turn, either from violence, mass shootings in America, to lying politicians, and those politicians, especially those that are leaders, they're officers, they're judges, and we're going to talk about this in just a minute. There seems to be no consequence to their actions. And in this case, right now, trending big time, whether you're on Twitter, whether you are watching YouTube, whatever, right now, trending is the Comey situation, all right? He was the head of the FBI. He has been exposed as one who has lied. He has leaked, and he has defrauded what is known as the FISA court. Now, for those of you that aren't aware of what the FISA court is, all right, first of all, that is the court of the Secret Service. I mean, I don't know if we really can say too much more about it. This is what's called the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, or the FISA is what establishes this court, okay? So it is, the FISA in and of itself is, of course, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Association, all right? This is the group that actually puts together and appoints the court. And so the FISA court, all right, this court is extremely important when you're dealing with issues that have to do with the FBI, the CIA, spying in the country, okay? And it's kind of what we would know as a secret court. So I'm not here to talk about the FISA court right now, or it's also known as FISC. All right, I'm not here to talk about the FISA court. However, what I am going to say is that Comey has been proven to have defrauded this particular court. And you defraud when you lie. It's a little simple, okay? And so people are wondering all over the country, is there going to be consequences? And there was a big thing right now with Judge Janine and Sarah Sanders just talking about the fact that they believe right now that our Attorney General is going to ultimately render the proper consequence to this situation. However, the problem goes so much deeper than Comey. The problem is that the government of the United States of America, or there are members within that government that have lost their way. They have transgressed the righteousness and the justice of God. And because of it, everything is absolutely chaotic in America. When you read in the book of Yeshayahu, when you read in the book of Isaiah, and you start to see the decline of Israel, and you start to listen and really listen to the prophets, what they are telling you is you are seeing a nation that is spinning out of control because it has lost the very pillars of its foundation. And those pillars are justice and righteousness, and there's a third pillar, which is also mercy. Now, so with that introduction, I want to take you very briefly to the Parsha, not this week's portion in the Torah, but last week's portion in the Torah. I wanted to actually get to you before today, but I wasn't able to, so I want to briefly touch on it today. We're just going to bring out some very critical points about the idea of justice and how it is different, all right, than the idea of justice as it pertains to Greek thought, or as it pertains to a one world government or humanitarian voice. How is it different? But let's start right here. Let's take a look at, I'm going to show you here, this here in Hebrew spells the word shoftim. Okay, let's see, I'll put that right here so you can see it, shoftim. All right, and shoftim is the name of the portion because it starts out in the Hebrew, shoftim. They, and then it talks about officers. So shoftim is your judges, and then it talks about shotrim, which is your officers, or those that oversee, those that rule, okay? So this is basically your government, which is made up of your rulers and your judges, which is really, if you take a look at the way that the government of the United States is set up, we have those that head up the different departments, those that are in a position to rule, but we also have a separate court, the Supreme Court, the appellate courts. You know, you have the diverse courts in from state, cities, states, communities, all the way up to the government. So we have judges in the land, we have governors in the land, we have rulers, we have this establishment. And so this starts out, judges and officers, all right, shall you make in all of your gates. Every city, every state, everywhere you shall have judges and officers. Now, of course, at the time, it was pertaining to the 12 tribes. But in America, because America is founded again on the basis of government according to God and the Torah, all right? Because of that, we have set up the same type of system. And it says here, you shall set up judges and officers in all of your gates, which the Lord thy God giveth you, tribe by tribe, all right, state by state, okay? And you shall judge the people with righteous judgment. You shall not pervert judgment. You shall not respect persons. Neither shall you take a gift, because a gift does blind the eyes of the wise. All right? And you will not pervert the words of the righteous. In other words, you will not say that the righteous are lying when they're telling the truth. That's a novel idea, huh? All right, and that brings us to this right here. What you're seeing here in Hebrew is the next verse, which is really a foundational verse for the entire concept and idea of justice, because it says here, tzedek, tzedek, all right? And so justice, justice shall you follow. And that's what I have here, right here. That is the word in Hebrew for tzedek. Now, many of you have probably heard the word tzedek or tzedakah, because it's very closely aligned with the word charity. Now, a lot of times people interpret the word charity as the word for, or a type of love. And, you know, there is a point to that, okay? Because if God is love, all right, and Justice is one of the aspects of who God is, all right? It's one of the ethical components of his character, of his nature. All right, we can go down that route. However, truly, charity is oftentimes the English word, the Latin English word used for saga, which is justice. Also, with that, saga and tzedek also stands for righteousness. So that kind of really puts a little bit of a spin on this word for charity. Okay, and we'll come back to that. So here we have tzedek, all right? And so it says that you will follow it. And so this is the passage that talks about justice. Justice and only justice shall you follow, that you may live and inherit the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. So often when we're dealing, especially on not only on an individual, that's a given, but on a national basis, this whole concept here is directly connected to the blessings of Hashem. This is definitely the connection here at justice. So let me just read to you some of the commentary on justice, all right? The fact that it's mentioned twice. Now, we happen to be in Deuteronomy chapter 16, and we're starting with verse 18, just so many of you know. All right, let me put it right here on this green sheet. Oh, I knew that was going to happen. Hold on, everybody. You know, this leg, I don't know. It really, I tell you what, I fix it, and it just, it doesn't want to stay up. So, hold on, everybody. You know what? If we don't have fun when we're, you know what? All right. We're going to hold on. Don't worry, it's not going to go. It'll stay up. But hold on. Everybody. Let me fix this thing. There we go. Okay. Okay, great. We're back. Yeah, I expected that. Never a dull moment. So Deuteronomy. Okay, here we go. I don't want to write too hard. That poor leg. All right. And you know, have you ever tried to get one of these in Israel? You just can't. So I have to like do with what I have. Okay, here we go. So in this, all right, we're in Deuteronomy chapter 16, starting with verse number 18. All right, Deborah. Okay. So in the commentary, all right, we point out the first thing is that the fact that it's mentioned twice, it is emphasizing, you know, it has really the greatest possible emphasis on the supreme duty of even-handed justice to all. No favoritism. You don't judge because somebody's rich or because somebody's poor. You actually judge the situation at hand. All right? A Hasidic rabbi, and let me just read this because very, very good point, explained that justice and only justice implies do not use unjust means to secure the victory of justice. A deep saying, man is slow to realize that justice is strong enough, it's divine enough to triumph without itself resorting to injustice. In the eyes of the prophets, justice was a divine, irresistible force. Isaiah says and talks about, all right, one word when he's referring to justice and victory, and that is the word tzedakah. That is the word right here, tzedek, tzedek or tzedakah, all right? The word that is, again, so often spoken of as charity. So God says, justice, justice, you shall follow. Now, it's very, very interesting that the psalmist and the sages, so you see this, you know, with Melech David, you also see this, or King David, and you also see this among not only the prophets, but you also see it among the sages, where they talk about it, when David says, let justice, or actually I believe it was the cry of Amos, okay, Amos, it says, it was Amos that said, let justice, all right, roll down as waters, and righteousness as a mighty stream. Now, we're watching what's going on in the Bahamas. You talk about mighty streams, all right? So justice is so powerful, it's so strong, that it can handle wickedness. It will mow it over. It will destroy it. It will deal with it. That's how powerful justice is. And you don't need to resort to any other means to see justice prevail when it's foundational. So the first thing we want to talk about today, when we talk about justice, there it goes, guys, is that there's, even though it is an ethical part of God's character, his nature, all right? It's just one of those ethical qualities. However, it is the basis for all the others. Melech David said this. He said, righteousness and justice are the foundations of thy throne. So the foundation of God's throne is justice and righteousness, which simply means to do what's right, okay? So justice and righteousness are the foundations of thy throne. So when we take a look at that, all right, we have to take a look at, first of all, what justice is not. Now, in a time when tolerance is the coin word for the day, along with political correctness, all right, they all go together, or, you know, let's all harmonize and sing Kumbaya together, all right? When we look at that, we can tell you right now, justice is not, it is not harmony. On the contrary, it is not tolerance. On the contrary, all right? Very interesting. In Plato's Republic, we get a real good glimpse at the Greek definition, or the Greek ethos of what, idea, concept of what justice is. Now, for those of you that may not be aware, the world's educational system is based on the Greek educational system. Even our laws, all right, the Greco-Roman system is the system that is so often has been the system that has created the legal system of the world, okay? It hasn't been the Hebrew. That's why America and Israel are so different than the rest of the world in many, many, many ways. And that's why it's a travesty when you have a country that has based or created a foundation that is Torah-based, based on the government of God, and they allow the ideas of the world that is contrary to the Torah to creep in and control their educational system, or their government, or their legal system, and we can just go on and on and on. All right, so let's take a look at Plato's Republic, okay? It says here, Plato's Republic, again, now let me just preface this, and let me just make sure that everybody's doing okay here. I just see that we might be going a little bit slow. Is everybody with me? Yeah, somebody let me know if you can hear me. I think, there we go, we're back. All right, so Plato's Republic gives you a good idea, once again, of the concept of justice according to, really the Greco-Roman establishment of ideas. And so it says here that it implies a harmonious arrangement of society, kind of like social justice. All right, a harmonious arrangement of society by which every human peg is put into its appropriate hole, so that those who perform humble functions shall be content to perform them in due subservience to their superiors. And folks, that is socialism and communism to the core, to the core. They just put you in a peg and you're to perform your duties. The government feeds you the money. Whatever you do, they'll take care of you. They'll feed you. They'll just put you in your peg, and you will never, ever, ever have a voice or be able to become what you were destined to become, because they will keep you in that place. And in that place, you will be subservient to the government. Period. End of subject. All right. You just have to look around. I'm telling you, just look around and take a look at countries that are socialist or communist, and you tell me. All right. So then, it stresses the inequalities of human nature. So the Greek concept of justice stresses inequality. Where, all right, on the contrary, the Hebrew stresses equality. Let me read this to you. So the Hebrew concept of justice is a concept where equality is stressed. So a lot of people may think, really, and if you ever go back in Jewish history, even modern Jewish history, okay, you will find that oftentimes it's been the Jewish community, Jewish women that had led the rally cry so women could vote, all right, that have led really they see the injustice in something and they lock onto it and they start to kind of ebb away at that injustice because they see an injustice. And so they look to equality. So the Hebrew concept of justice stresses equality, where the Greek concept of justice stresses inequality. Now, let me read this, and it says, to understand the idea of justice in Israel, we must bear in mind, and when we're talking here, this is commentary from our passage in Deuteronomy and Devarim. So we're not just talking about Israel today, we're talking about the concept that developed in Israel thousands of years ago, all right? So it says here, to understand the idea of justice in Israel, we must bear in mind the biblical teaching that man is created in the image of God, that every human being, there is a divine spark in every human being, and that each human life is sacred and of infinite worth. In consequence, a human being cannot be treated as chattel or a thing, but must be treated as a personality And as a personality, every human being is the possessor of the right to life, honor, and the fruits of his labor. So here we have these 3 points, which are the basis of what's called the inalienable rights, the rights that are God-given. And that is the right to life, the right to honor or respect, and the right to the fruits of his labor. All right? And the whole concept of justice, and this is why it's foundational, is because it is based on the fact that man is made in the image of God. And so, when we look at that, one of the best definitions I have ever seen or read is justice is the awe-inspired respect. All right, so we're going to put that word in here. Respect. Respect for the personality. Let's put that here. For the personality of others and their inalienable rights. So let me put that in here. Inalienable. Rights. Okay. So let's go over that again. Justice is the awe-inspired respect for the personality of others and their inalienable rights. You know, if I was to, you talk about your friends, your parents, your family members, how often, can the different personalities of a family get frustrating? How often have you ever wished, you're like, oh, God, I wish they would do it my way. I wish they would say it the way I say it, or think it the way I think it, How difficult has it ever been in your life, in diverse circumstances, to defer your bias, your position statement, the way that you think, all right, your idea, to someone else who has a different idea or has a different way of doing something, right? So one of the ideas, the whole concept of justice is really cultivating this awe-inspired respect for the personality of another, okay? And in doing so, really understanding that that individual has inalienable rights from God. And one of those rights, in addition to the fact that he has the right to life, okay, is the fact that he has the right to respect, to honor, okay? That we have a mandate from God to treat one another with respect. And honestly, the opposite of that, and I'm going to read this, the opposite is injustice. Now, when we think of injustice, we often think of it in legal terms, all right? We think of it in a way that, somebody was harmed and the person that harmed them did not incur the consequences that they should have. And of course, as I said right now, we're looking at this whole concept on many levels in America. The government, the mass shootings. I was sent a video article today of 2 pastors' wives, I believe it was in Virginia, 2 pastors' wives that got into an argument, and one drew a gun on her. And it accidentally went off. I don't think it hurt the other one, but it went somewhere. But the point is, oh my gosh, are you I mean, what is going on in the heart? If you have held an offense that is so deep that you would pull a gun on another pastor's wife, that, folks, tells me. And by the way, I mean, this is, these aren't just in arbitrary churches that, have flown the coop and God left a long time ago. I mean, this gets into your spiritual, your Pentecostal, apostolic movement. I mean, that's where this happened. How sick, how far removed are we from the Torah? Are we from tshuva? Are we from repentance? Are we from forgiveness? That we, even those that are in a position of ministry, a position of leadership, whether, it doesn't matter what level, okay, that you would get in an argument so bad that you would pull a gun on somebody? Somebody has got to get a checkup from the neck up here. All right. So this whole concept is based on respect. It is based on the inalienable rights of God. It's based on the other. It's based on that personality and the fact that they're made in the image of God. And so I want to stress once again that a lot of the ideas concerning justice that are making their way into the progressive left and into Washington, D.C. right now are not Hebraic. They are not based in the Bible. They are not based in the idea and the government of God. In fact, the exact opposite. And they are based in Greek thought, what I would call pagan thought, pagan idolatrous thinking. And it is based on inequality, all right? And here we have also the contrary, which is ivrit, which means to be on the other side. And it's based on equality, the fact that all of us are made in the image of Hashem, the image of God. Now, let's just take that even a little bit further, all right? It is thus seen, let me read this, that whereas in the Greek, all right, the idea of justice is often akin to harmony, which we said it is not, okay? All right, the Hebrew is akin to holiness. So I have that right here at the bottom. The Greek idea of justice is akin to harmony. Let me know how well that's working, folks. I'm sorry. Where Hebrew idea of justice is akin to holiness. Now, holiness is, contrary to what a lot of people think, it's separation from the world, or it's, it's the monk type of thinking, or the Buddhist kind of thinking. Holiness is when you separate yourself and you become a super spiritual type of guru. That is not at all the idea of holiness in Hebrew thought, in Jewish thought. On the contrary, holiness in and of itself is the full embracing and involvement of life, every aspect of life. And yet, at the same time, so discerning between what is right and what is wrong, what is good, what is bad or evil, all right? What is profane and what is holy. And shunning that which would be profane, which would be evil, which would be wrong. So you're embracing, you're fully involved in life, but you shun that which is wicked. And so this is the concept. This is why when we look at a pagan idea, it's always this universal, harmonious idea where we all get along and we have no inner conscience whatsoever. The very thing that God gave us internally, intrinsically, we're born with it. To be able to shun evil and choose good, or make the choice, all right? It's the conscience. To choose between what we call the Yetzer Hara, the Yetzer Tov, all right? That which is evil, the evil inclination, or that which is good, the good inclination, all right? We shun that in the pagan idea of justice, where everybody, whether you worship an idol or you don't worship an idol, whether you're wicked and you're murderous or you're righteous and you're good, everybody is supposed to just blend together. And that is very, very, very far from the concept of justice when we look at it from the perspective of God and His Word, His Torah. Torah, by the way, again, means instructions. So, let me just read on here. It says here, the Holy God is sanctified by justice. This is Isaiah chapter 5, verse 16. All right? The Holy God is sanctified by justice. Now this, once again, is one of the most mind-blowing understandings of the power of justice. Because when an individual acts in a just way and he walks upright before God with moral integrity, it literally sanctifies God. In other words, it causes mankind to be separated from, it separates man from iniquity, from transgression, and causes him not only to introspectively see how far from God it is, but it causes God to become front and center, sanctified in the eyes of man. In other words, God himself is sanctified by justice. Man, then when he is faced with something that is righteous and something that is just, he has to either shun God or he has to actually look to him. It says here, and I'm just going to read this, it says, in brief, where there is no justice, no proper and practical appreciation of the human rights of every human being as sons of the one and only God of righteousness, there we have a negation of religion. The oppressor, it's just a little deep there. I mean, I could go off on that for quite a while, but let me read on. The oppressor, the man who tramples on others, and especially on those like the orphan and the stranger who are too weak to defend themselves, is throughout Scripture held forth as the enemy of God and man. Now this is the commentary. I'm reading from the commentary of my Chumash, all right? This is the Sansino Chumash, and so I'm reading from the commentary of that. It says, the final disappearance of injustice and oppression is represented in the up-and-coming New Year, the Jewish New Year prayer called the Amidah, as the goal of human history. and as synonymous with the realization of God's kingdom on earth. So, the last thing we want to say about justice is that the work of justice is peace. And so, in fact, in Isaiah 32:17, it says, the work of justice is peace, and the effect thereof quietness and confidence forever. Now, there's a lot more, and we'll probably come to a lot more on justice, but in this Parsha portion, this is the portion where God is giving, or actually in this case, Moshe is talking about how God gave the instruction to appoint judges and to appoint officers, and what they were supposed to do is pursue justice for everyone. And so I want to go to a story in the book of Chronicles, in closing on this session. I want to go to 2 Chronicles, chapter 19. Now let me just give you a little background. This is the story of King Jehoshaphat. And he was, Jehoshaphat, he was the king of Judah, all right? And he was a fairly righteous king. He really loved Hashem. He really, followed him. When you read about him, he was just, whatever he would do it, except he had a problem. And it occurs a couple of times. And that is, first, he had married into the family of Ahab. And Ahab was everything but. His wife was the wicked Jezebel, and he was the king of Israel, and he was a wicked king. And so consequently, the scripture teaches us that that there were all these false prophets that would give advice and talk to Ahab, and Ahab wanted Jehoshaphat to go to war with him. And so we read the story about how Jehoshaphat, he says, listen, is there any word from the prophets on whether we should go up, whether we should not go up? And Ahab pulls out all these false prophets, and they say, you go up, you're going to win, you're going to. And then he says, isn't there one more that's got maybe a different word? And in steps the prophet, let me see, it would be, it's actually Micaiah. So that is the prophet here. He steps in, and it says, Ve'omer Micaiah, it says, he says, behold, hineni, all right? He says, you will see on the day when you enter into this inner room, you hide yourself, that if any man, even if you come back alive, Ahab, if you even come back alive, then I haven't heard from God. He said the exact opposite. He says, this is going to be a fierce battle, and you're going to die. And you ain't coming back. And so he gets put in prison with bread and water because he told the truth as far as what he saw in God. And again, Jehoshaphat had a real dilemma here because he went to war with this wicked king. He compromised his righteousness, and he went to war. He compromised what he knew what was right. And he almost died himself because he's the one that was wearing the garments of the king. So he comes back from this escapade alive. Ahab dies, all right? And it says here, he was visited by, and this is chapter 19 of Chronicles. It says, Jehu, the son of Hanani, it says, the seer went out to meet him and said to the King Jehoshaphat, all right, Jehoshaphat, Melech Jehoshaphat, he said, should you help the wicked and love those who hate the Lord, and so bring wrath on yourself from Adonai? And then he says, but there's some good in you, for you have removed the idols from the land, Ashtaroth, and you have set your heart to seek God. So right away, the seer says, should you help the wicked and love those who hate Adonai, the Lord, and so bring wrath on yourself from Adonai, from the Lord? And so you see once again, this whole concept of justice and judgment, all right, or righteousness, it can even extend to the relationships you have and those who are doing that which in the eyes of God are wicked. And yet, you know, you're befriending them, you are collaborating with them, and here we see that that is not pleasing in the eyes of God. So in this, he goes on where God tells him now that he needs to appoint judges. And so it says here in verse number 5 of 19, it says, so Jehoshaphat, it says, he appointed judges in the land, in all the fortified cities of Judah, city by city. He said to the judges, consider what you are doing, for you do not judge for man, but for Adonai, for the Lord, who is with you when you render judgment. In Hebrew, it is ki lo le'adam tishpatu ki le'Adonai. You do not consider your ways, for what you're doing, you are not, it says, for you do not judge for man or on behalf of man. You are judging on behalf of Adonai. And he is with you when you render judgment. And then he goes on to say, now let the fear of the Lord be upon you. Be very careful what you do, for the Lord our God will not have part in unrighteousness or partiality or the taking of a bribe. So once again, this is in Chronicles, but we read the very same things when we are in Vayikra and Leviticus, when we are in Shemot, in Exodus, when we are in all of the Torah, but in this case, when we're in Devarim, we read these same concepts about judges. Now, with that said, I want to just bring it right back to our conversation at the very beginning when we take a look at what's going on in America. And we're taking a look at the fact that the judges of America, many of them, not all of them, but many of them have a very difficult time judging according to justice or righteousness. And that is because the whole concept of justice has become perverted in America. The concept of justice, all right, where we are judging, all right, on behalf of God, not on behalf of man or in favor of that which we like, that which we don't like, men we like, on behalf of the situation, to whether they can give a little bit of money, a little bit of a bribe here, pay the judge off. It says that that blinds their eyes. And I think if we were to pray, and if we were wanting to see a shift in America, we would want to see a shift among those that are leading, those that are judging, that they would, one, do tshuva, turn back to God and fear Him, knowing that they are been placed in a position of responsibility to judge according to the whole proper concept of justice and righteousness. And then, again, shunning a lot of the issues that we see. There's a word I'm looking for, a very, very specific word, but it's not coming, and the one that is coming, I don't want to, but a lot of the patronization that we see in Washington, I think, once again, we have got to see that the giving of bribes, the taking of money, we can just, I'm not going to name names, but there are so many very far left progressive think tanks and organizations. I discuss in my book how they hire journalists and have a narrative that they want to get out there, and they pay them for that narrative. All right. How when they wanted to create the echo chamber for the Iranian nuclear deal, they planted false information into think tanks, and they planted key spokespersons so journalists would speak to them and then begin to put out the information that they wanted the public to hear. That is a bribe, folks. That is blinding the eyes. And I think that what's happened in Washington, there has been so much abuse of the concept of justice, and it has so often reverted to a paganistic concept of justice, which definitely stresses inequality. All right? I mean, oh my God, that's why you're here. I mean, it's insane what I'm hearing out of Washington. It's insane. And with that, what we see is that there's a blindness that has set in. A blindness that no longer is grasping the concept of what true justice is. And so, I'll tell you, I just wanted to talk about that. I'll end with a story real quick. I had a situation a few years back. It was so crazy. I had just gotten back from Israel. I was in the States. I was driving with my nieces, actually. I was in Chicago. I was taking them out. We all had gone out shopping for the day. And we're on the way back, and there was a ton of fog that was rolling in on this one road that we take back, and it was winter time, so it was a little bit, it wasn't icy or anything like that, but it was very foggy. And I just really had this fear, and I wanted to just get back to my sister's house and make sure everybody was safe, and so I got pulled over for speeding. I don't know how much I was speeding. I don't even know what the speed limit was on this road. Maybe I was going 50, 55 in a 40. I don't even know, but I got pulled over. And my niece, both of them so adorable. They're like, Aunt Kim, I've got a bad feeling about this. I'm like, oh no, it won't be a problem at all. They'll be back in a minute. I'm good. And they come back and they say, ma'am, can you step out of the car? I'm like, no, I mean, my nieces are here. And he's like, ma'am, you have to step out of the car. So I step out of the car. It's freezing. I have no coat. And he says, you're under arrest. I'm like, what? I am under arrest? And he says, yes, you are driving on a suspended license. I'm like, there's no way. And he said, yes. And I said, okay. So I said, listen, let me call some family members. Let me take care of my nieces, which I did right away. And then I was arrested. They hauled me off. They put me in a cell. They chained my hands between my legs in this cold cell. I could not believe what was happening when my brother-in-law came and bailed me out. And I was furious. I was so angry in that cell because I knew what had happened. I had gotten a speeding ticket months and months and months and months earlier in Louisiana, which I paid, by the way. And I sent, not only did I pay it, but I also sent the payment of that to Florida's ticket place, okay, the driver's license bureau. So I sent that, plus I checked up on the town that I got the ticket to make sure they had sent that. I mean, we're going back probably close to a year. And I documented everything. And so I was furious because that meant that Florida had not entered in that ticket had been paid. So I went back to Florida. I was on the warpath. I called Louisiana. They confirmed once again that they had told Florida. I called Florida. I wrote a letter to Charlie Crist, who was the governor at the time. And I wrote a letter to the driver's license. And I mean, I actually called the district attorney. I said, can I sue them? I was so upset. And because I mean, that was bad in front of my nieces. How not only humiliating, but traumatizing for them. And so I get a note from the driver's license bureau, probably in about 30 minutes after I ranted and raved, called everybody in that I knew, any connections I had. And I get this letter, back email version, and it says, according to our records, your license is fully active, everything is fine, you have no suspensions, you have never had a suspension. And I was like, yeah, this is how they're gonna play the game. But I am now gonna have to foot the bill, and I'm going to have to go back to Chicago to defend. So I call a lawyer and I tell the lawyer, I said, this is the circumstance, and he's in Chicago. And I said, so what do you think I should do? And he said, listen, you don't need us. You just go. And he said, you don't need us to defend you. You have got this case sewn up. Just take everything, just go. And I said, okay. So I went back to Chicago on the day, and I'll never forget standing in front of this judge. And I had the prosecuting attorney there, and the judge says, do you have an attorney? And he reads me this riot act of all the bad, horrible things that are going to happen to me. And he says, do you have an attorney? I said, no, I'm my own attorney today. And so I lay out my case. And the judge says, he looks at that prosecuting attorney and he said, is this true? That she has never had a suspension, and she has not, she does not suspended, but she's never had a suspension. And the prosecuting attorney looked at the judge and he said, it's true. And the judge, I tell you, he said, all right, you give her back all of her money. You completely wipe this record out, so it is never, ever going to show she was arrested, and you are acquitted. Go. I was like, Todala El, of course. I was very, very happy about that. And I was very happy that justice was on my side, that Hashem was on my side, that justice was on my side in this particular situation. And it all worked out. This was my big deal with the judge, all right? This was my time to face the judge. And it all worked out. What a story, huh? But anyways, you know, tzedek, tzedek, justice, justice we shall pursue. It is the foundation of all of the ethical character traits of God. His throne is established on justice and righteousness. And of course, I always add that leg of mercy, because he even loves mercy. He says every single day that the sun comes up, his mercies are new. You cannot have justice without the balance of mercy. But anyways, justice, justice. Justice is not harmony. It is not tolerance. It is not inequality, but it stresses equality. And at the very heart of what it is the awe-inspired respect for the personality of others and their inalienable rights. And this is what we need to plead for, and we need to get back to in America. That is justice. And we need to see it restored in the government of the United States of America. We need it restored in the Democratic Party. We need it restored in the Republican Party. And we need to see justice on those that do not fear God, mock God, and are trying to create their own justice. That is an injustice. And that is the end of my little teaching on justice. All right. Janie, it is so good to see you. Bill, it's great to see you. Bill Lavensdorf, good to see you. Carolyn Phelps, Sharon, Linda, it's so good to see you. Steph, hey girl, good to see you. The Mallory's, great to see you. Randy, so good. Lila, Sue, Sam, Sung Heng, so good to see you. It's been a while. Alice, George Mack, Betty, so good to see you, Betty. Sarah Koppel, great to see you. Natasha, the Trammels, so good to see you. Jim Curley, Stacy, it's so good to see you, my friend. How are you? And Eddie, so good to see you. Anthony, good to see you. Shelly girl, it's so good to see you. Kristen, Regina, it is so good to see all of you today. I'm so glad. Carl, thank you. Toda. And it's so good to see you. So for those of you that just missed it, I just did a whole teaching on justice. I have another one. I might come on in just shortly to talk about that. But I really wanted to lay out today the concept of justice, because it is the very fabric of this foundational reality idea that is the underpinning of everything built in the United States. This is vital to understand, because if you understand how the role of justice is when you are establishing a government, then you will understand why the breakdown of justice in a government is so damning and so chaotic, and it leads to exactly what we're seeing today in the United States government. So on that note, everybody, thank you so much for being with me, and I will talk to you later. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. All the best. Bye-bye.